Well, we have a common interest, so maybe you and Elaine and I could.
Hello, Frank. How are you? Just a reminder, everyone, this meeting is recorded. It's not a public meeting, but we do record the meeting, and then we share that on our website. I've just started the recording. I think we have a good crowd already, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. All right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Let's see here.
Yeah, can.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Call the meeting to order at 12:03 p.m. Welcome, everyone. Just a reminder to everybody, the meeting is recorded, and we do post it on our website after. Today's agenda isn't very long, but hopefully we can have some, that'll give us an opportunity to have some healthy discussion with some key items. Today's agenda, we'll go ahead and have some discussion items, just brief updates on the active transportation plan, general announcements, and an open forum. So with that being said, we'll go into the discussion item. So the discussion item for today is the discussion on developing a regional complete streets policy and the possible next steps. So as you all know, our active transportation plan spoke to developing and implementing a complete streets policy. And ideally, this would be at the city level, to implement this at the city level. That way, our streets are maintained and operated as complete streets. And right now, I'll provide more context on complete streets. But since this committee is a subcommittee of the MPO, what we can do as an MPO is look at the possibility of adopting, say, like a regional complete streets resolution or policy. But then again, it doesn't get to addressing the infrastructure at the city level. So I wanted to talk with the committee, just discuss to see what would be the best approach as an MPO subcommittee, and how we can approach this on a regional level, and then also how this can translate to the local level, the city of Laredo. So just to give some context on complete streets, and anybody during this very brief presentation, you can go ahead and ask questions, chime in. I just want this to kind of be like an open discussion. So first of all, what are complete streets? So complete streets welcome all ages and abilities, right? So the concept is, it's more of a concept, right? To make sure that the streets are friendly to people of all ages and all abilities. This includes pedestrians, bicyclists, drivers, and people riding public transit. So sometimes there's this misconception that complete streets is just trying to get everybody off their car and onto bikes or to use public transit. But really, complete streets is focusing on everybody and making sure that the street is safer for all users, right? Pedestrians, your bicyclists, drivers, and again, the people that are using transit. So complete streets do provide multiple modes of transportation, and hopefully this can provide options for a less congested future. Of course, we have congestion issues here in Laredo, not as bad as other communities, but one day we could get there. So we want to make sure that there's different options available to reduce congestion. So what are some of the benefits of having complete streets and considering complete streets? So benefits include improved safety, enhanced public health. As there's other opportunities for people to walk, ride bikes, better accessibility. For people that are maybe disabled, or just for anybody, or for children. Equitable outcomes and economic development opportunities. According to Smart Growth America, complete streets policies formalize a community's intent to plan, design, and maintain streets so they're safe for all ages and abilities. So, as I mentioned, since we are an MPO subcommittee, and the MPO considers the planning at a regional level, and there's different approaches we can take, right, to look at complete streets. I looked at some examples nationally and here in the state of Texas, what other MPOs were doing in regards to complete streets. In Orlando, their MPO, Metro Plan Orlando, created a complete streets policy. So this was an actual complete streets policy that said that any projects that they considered for, for funding, or they considered to prioritize in their long range plans or prioritize in their transportation improvement program, would consider components of complete streets. So, for example, in their funding mechanisms or in their awarding grants, so, they look at things such as, if this is going to be, if the project is going to be a complete street or supports that effort. In Texas, an example I found was Alamo Area MPO. What they created was a resolution supporting a complete streets policy. Keep in mind that the Alamo Area MPO deals with several jurisdictions, San Antonio and their suburban cities. A lot of the different entities within that metropolitan boundary. So what they did was this resolution to say that they're going to support and they're going to encourage, complete streets in all these multiple jurisdictions. So they provide support, technical assistance to the different communities in the San Antonio metropolitan area to make sure that they are designing and implementing complete streets. And then another example, also from Florida, is the Broward MPO Complete Streets program. So they actually created a program where, again, they're helping jurisdictions to plan complete streets, to consider complete streets in their planning approaches and their maintenance and their operations. But they went a step further and created a complete streets guidelines. So there's actually MPOs out there that are creating guidelines to help the different jurisdictions, design for complete streets. And again, complete streets, a lot of times people think, oh, we're going to implement a complete streets policy. It's going to be, this needs to be applied, across the board at all, throughout the community in all streets. But no, it's context sensitive. So it depends, right? There's going to be some circumstances where, it's just not practical or feasible. But it's more about creating that mindset, that approach, just making sure that when we're planning our roads or planning our regional transportation system, that we're considering all users, not just people that are driving. So with that being said, I just wanted to open this up for a discussion, see what you all think, how maybe here at a regional level through the MPO we can implement this going forward. Based on your feedback here, staff will come back. We'll start looking, do more research, start developing different policies or a said policy. Then eventually we could recommend this to our MPO technical committee for review, and then to our MPO policy committee for consideration. But I know, we've talked about also implementing this at the city level. I see we have our, planning director, Orlando Navarro, traffic director here, Danny McGee was here. He's here as well. So we have people at the city level and definitely our council members as well that are here today that can maybe shed some insight and maybe, talk a little bit about what they feel about this concept and how we can move this forward.
Hi, everyone. This is Regina. I just wanted to mention that as an advocate and being part of Bike Laredo since 2018, I would say that, this is a policy that has come up again and again every single year, that we've always wanted it to be passed through the city. When we had a bike pedestrian coordinator in the traffic department took this on, did a bunch of research, and we've always supported this. It's part of the league's report card on Laredo's recommendations. And then I think we also heard that it would be part of Recode Laredo. So I just wanted to ask, like on the city side, where this stands and whether it would be part of Recode.
Yeah, if I can, what the comprehensive plan and Recode do take into account the bike trails and stuff like that. We are encouraging developers, engineers to follow the comprehensive plan. We've had meetings with engineers just recently, as recent as last week, to go over some of the guidelines so that they can start learning what the guidelines are. Now, there is some pushback, but it's it's what it is. We're encouraging it. We're even sometimes that's how it is. You know, it's the policy. That's what's going on, the ordinance. And so we are pushing forward. I know traffic has also pushed to get the trails in, maybe even reduce some of the lanes for cars so that we can encourage more sidewalk, more bike trail width to the lanes to kind of to help with that.
Guess my question, Mr. Navarro, is more on passing this as a policy within the city of Laredo. I know that we already do a lot of efforts to bring in components of making a complete street, but I think as a policy, it's something that this group has been wanting to see for the past several years, and it just never seems to be the right time for council to pass it or something. So, and I remember hearing that it would be part of Recode, like it would be passed within the Recode package. So I don't know if that's still a possibility or if it needs to be a separate policy altogether.
This is Danny McGee. Let me ask you a question just to, I guess, for the sake of discussion. You don't feel that the current comp plan, the Viva Laredo one, encompasses enough of it? Or you just don't want a separate policy, period?
The comp plan, you know, it's a plan, but the comp plan itself recommends policies. It's not like a comprehensive policy in itself. So I think that it does need a separate policy because Complete the Streets is, you know, adopted in most other cities. And it's like it's a standalone policy that really gives the guidelines and a lot of what Mr. Mendiva spoke about today.
Because I was going to bring up a topic just like this, but it comes from a different angle, is that and we have the comp plan and it pushes, you know, the bike lanes and the sidewalks and the green areas, and which encompasses a lot of this. But I think we're not cohesive as a city when it comes to we have our comp plan, but I've gone to P&Z several times, and you know, maybe Orlando or Juan can correct me or whoever goes to the meetings. But even the P&Z Commission has made comments that go totally against the Viva Laredo plan. You know, they've made comments as, why are we putting bike lanes here? Why are we putting sidewalks here? So I know we have a couple of one or two council members on here, but I think that needs to be addressed. Is that, you know, here we have one group trying to get these complete streets, and then our own planning and zoning commission doesn't feel that it's something that they're supporting. That's the comments I've heard. Maybe I'm correct.
This is Frank. I would like to jump in here to follow up on that. That's a different discussion. I mean, how the city and our administrators and our council and these committees work with the comp plan, that's a different discussion. What's important about talking about complete streets here is that, number one, the comp plan doesn't make policies. It makes recommendations on what the city needs to move forward, and that was developed 5-6 years ago with a lot of community support and effort. And those policies aren't in place yet. That's number one. Number two, getting back to Juan's question.
I thought the comp plan defined what the street's supposed to look like, what the items, the elements.
It gives examples of what it could look like, but those are not the definitive. Like right now, you cannot do that because that's what Recode Laredo is about. Recode Laredo is about allowing the land development codes.
I mean, I know I can't speak for Kirby because he's not here anymore, but when he was here, we were incorporating all of those details into what we were asking developers to do.
Sure. Okay.
So we were taking it that, you know, it's the plan. It's not suggestions. It's where we're going toward.
No.
So we were incorporating those elements.
This is what yes and no. So the comp plan itself provided a direction, it provided a draft, but then following that, the MPO and the city collectively put together the active transportation plan, which is where I think, you know, Dan, you're referring to that as where the table was set on what to do, because that was adopted by the city council and it was added onto the comp plan.
No, I,
So,
I prefaced my whole conversation by saying that the elements of a complete streets. I never said complete streets. I just said the elements.
Exactly.
They're not showing support for it. So if we can't even get the elements supported, how can we get the actual policy? That's what I'm
Okay.
saying. It needs to be addressed. That was my whole point.
And I totally agree. I mean, we all agree with that. But what I wanted to say is that now that we have an adopted active transportation plan, which is an attachment or is part of the comp plan, that has been passed by the city council. It should be enacted. Now, complete streets is similar in a number of ways. Number one, it is a policy. It's something you adopt, just like we adopted Vision Zero. Complete streets is important because at the federal level, the Federal Highway Administration has basically adopted it. I believe there's an actual item in Congress to support it as well at the federal level. And that's also critically important because, as we all know, I think they're about to pass, what, a $3 trillion infrastructure bill? And I can tell you that that complete streets policy is going to be important for the cities and the states that apply for those monies. Because they do understand the importance of sharing the road. When we get to local politics and how people feel about it, that's a whole other animal. But I can tell you that when that infrastructure money is coming down the pike, I think it would be in our interest to have this already adopted at the city of Laredo as a policy. And like Juan, nicely laid it out, complete streets is just saying, hey, if you should have a safe place to walk on a sidewalk. If you walk, if you run, if you're in a wheelchair, you should have a safe route to get around the city. Whether you have a personal mobility device or you ride a bicycle, you should have a place in the public right of way to do that. And by the way, this is really important because this all connects to mass transit and the idea of taking people that don't want to be in cars out of cars. That we're not taking cars away from people. That's the fear. We hear it all the time. Don't give up our right of way. It's sharing the public right of way. That's what complete streets policy is. And if we adopt it, it puts us in a very good position for funding for your department, Dan, for the planning department, for all the departments that are here today. So I think it is important. And the other part of it is education. Like you said, who wants it, who doesn't want it. You're hearing it when you go to meetings. I mean, this is just what other cities have been doing, are doing, and this is something that we think is important as advocates on this committee, that it is adopted because it opens up a lot of avenues, literally avenues for our city.
I just want to make a comment in regards to both those conversations. I definitely agree that comp plan going forward adds that overall framework. And like you mentioned, the active transportation plan provided those routes, so a little bit more detail right into what we were going to be doing and implementing, specifically where. And the conversation we had with the complete streets was maybe designating some corridors because, even starting out, it's kind of a lot to digest. So if we can name a couple of corridors that we wanted to complete these streets and then grow from there, kind of gives that element of, this is what it looks like and this is how we can grow from there. So it's kind of, like you mentioned, having the policy lay out a few areas, and that way we can cement it into the ground and have a written policy.
Kirby had already done that. He had already identified all of those streets. He told us once. I think I don't know what you think, Frank, but should we go to the P&Z first and then send it to council for approval in the complete streets? What do you recommend?
Whatever it takes to get it passed.
Yeah.
Whatever works. I mean, I think everything you just said.
All in agreement.
Everything. Well, we have 3 council members, I think, on the line today, which is fantastic as usual. Thanks for your support. I mean, again, the policy isn't the plan. The policy is these are the things that you do by adopting it. So we're not necessarily saying this happens everywhere. And again, we have to remind everybody, this doesn't work everywhere. there's certain streets this can work on, and there's certain that we shouldn't be, it doesn't make any sense. Which is also, I think, sometimes the fear that people think we're just gonna, tear everything up and stop traffic. Which I don't think this is about, but, I think we just have to, have a plan, have a plan.
Yeah, and the active transportation plan, which was adopted as an appendix to the Viva Laredo comp plan, did include a draft complete streets policy that the city could implement. It was just very general, very basic. I don't know, since like Regina mentioned that you all have been trying to do this before as Bike Laredo, right? Every year. I don't know. You also have a draft. Maybe combine those, and we could look at how we could combine those and maybe push that forward. Like I said, here at the MPO, we want to see what supporting role we can play or how we could adopt this at a regional level. But again, I think, to have, that enforcement, you do need a policy like that at the city level as well.
So should that be the strategy, that we start with the MPO? Like you said, Juan, you've seen it, you showed us other communities that have done it.
Yeah.
Has that been like kind of the methodology, they're starting at the MPO, that it filters to the cities, or?
In
I don't
some
know.
cities, yes, but sometimes it's in these larger metropolitan areas that have several jurisdictions. So they're dealing with multiple cities. So they're providing guidelines, technical assistance to these different jurisdictions, and they're encouraging them to, implement a complete streets policy. But here, it's just pretty much the city of Laredo and Webb County. So it's a little different here. But I mean, depending on how we draft this and if it goes to the MPO policy committee for consideration, and at a future date, even if it's just like a resolution of support, I mean, maybe that would kickstart something.
But it's interesting you said that, because yes, we're pretty much Laredo, but I remember seeing, I think it was a news story a few months ago where Commissioner Jesse Gonzalez actually was on the news talking about going after some TAP funds. I'm sorry, TAP is a transportation alternative funds that were available for rural communities. And so Webb County actually was going for monies, that, and again, having an MPO, which they're under with a complete street policy, would assist them in getting more points for that funding. So I know we think of Laredo, but I mean, maybe we should ask him to join us as well. But I know that they actually applied for TAP funding for rural communities,
Oh
which
yeah,
doesn't fall under the MPO.
yeah, I agree. I think Rio Bravo, which is in the MPO boundary, but they applied for funds through the state grant. The MPO also gets these transportation alternative funds to decide local projects. Right now, we've already awarded projects in the past. We're estimating maybe sometime next year that we'll be able to have another call for projects just based on the available funding. So what these complete street policies do, and some of the other MPOs, is that they actually add complete streets as a criteria to get funded in some of these projects. So if they see that you have elements of complete streets in your projects, then you might be weighted higher. So that's basically something we could do at the MPO level, or also when we're considering projects to go into, like I mentioned, our long-range transportation plan. Those are also prioritized, right, for funding. So sometimes, we can add the complete streets as an element of that prioritization.
That's why I think it's important, because with a $3 trillion infrastructure bill coming down the pike, I can tell you that that policy is going to mean something to our local MPO, to our city, and to our county. Having that policy is going to help us with those funds.
Yeah, no, I think so, and I was going to echo what you mentioned about, there being that bill. I was looking at it right now. I believe it's the Complete Streets Act of 2021. This is something they're trying to pass, but within the infrastructure bill, I think they're also talking about some of these components. I know in the FAST Act, the one from 2015, they did have some components for complete streets. So just looking at the trends, with the federal government right now in terms of transportation, it seems like they're gonna in the future provide funding to regions, municipalities, jurisdictions that are implementing complete streets policies. So, like Frank said, we can get ahead of that curve.
And by the way, that 2021 bill that you mentioned, I am familiar with it, because I've been working with the League of American Cyclists and Bike Texas on working on the Hill for that, and that's got a very, very positive response. That's going to pass. At the federal level, that will pass. So this really is timely for us to get on board.
Thanks for sharing that, Frank.
I want to make a comment real quick. Hi,
Yes.
everybody.
Hi.
I'm gonna have to jump off right now at 12:30. I have another meeting. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm in favor of adopting this plan at the city. You know, I understand what Mr. McGee is saying because, for example, District 7, you know, the bike lanes on Santa Maria, right? People, we put them up and then people will complain about them and people still complain about the bike lanes on San Bernardo. People say, well, I never see anybody riding on them. You know, so we do get a lot of pushback, not just from, I mean, but from the public, right? And so like Santa Maria, what we have there is an incomplete plan because, you know, I guess the previous council member from District 8 didn't want to extend the bike lanes into District 8, which from my understanding was the whole purpose was to get the District 8 people that work further this way, riding their bikes over here to work. And so when we talk about the complete streets, you know, we also have to think about the fact that it also depends on, I guess, who's in council at the time and who's on our boards, who we are appointing to the planning and zoning and things like that, because there are a lot of people on planning and zoning that are not in favor of the bike lanes and things like that. So these are all factors that do play in. So I guess that was Mr. McGee's point, and I don't want to speak for you, Mr. McGee, but I kind of experienced a little bit of that, like in my short time that I've been in here, is the inconsistency amongst the different groups. So I think that as we're talking about a complete streets plan, I think we also need to kind of talk about like a philosophical level, like where are we philosophically, right? Like as a community and as a council and as a you know, because I know that we had this a strategic planning session with new council members, and one of the things that we outlined in that session was that we were going to prioritize, like for example, congestion on Mines Road, on FM 1472. We were going to prioritize the downtown, rehabbing downtown and things like that. So that session kind of allows us to kind of advocate for other things that we're trying to do, like where Councilmember Cigarro was bringing the vacant building ordinance, and some of the council members were like, well, I want, you know, in my district too. And I was like, yeah, but we agreed to prioritize downtown. And so having, I think, those philosophical overarching commitments and focuses will help sell the ideas that we're going to develop, because without that, then we're going to have a complete streets plan, but we're not going to have a complete like advocate plan or philosophical plan. So I think that would help advocate for, you know, why we're going to do the things that we're doing, and get the people that are hesitant in like the other boards on board with, hey, but this was the plan that we all agreed on. We all agreed that we were going to be pushing for funding. You know, we all agreed that we needed this for funding. And so things like that, I just want to make sure we don't forget that, because I think that's missing in a lot of what we're doing, is that we don't have the buy-in from the different groups because we don't have an agreed upon focus and strategy. And so I just want to throw that out there. But I mean, count on me for a complete streets plan. I think it's important to have these kinds of plans, but also however I can help with maybe we need a strategic planning session where we can all get on the same page or something as a transportation. I know that Recode is kind of there, but Recode got messed up with COVID. I know my district didn't get to have that meeting. I think District 8 was left out as well. But maybe just kind of getting on the same page as far as like where we're going and what we want. And I think that would help. But so I just wanted to throw that out there, but I am gonna have to log off. But Thank you so much for this meeting, and count on me for the plan. Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember. We appreciate the
you.
feedback. Good luck.
Thank you.
I think those are very interesting points, and it kind of like begs the question, like, okay, how do we approach this? Is there still more education that needs to happen? More conversations with stakeholders, right, before we attempt to pass a complete streets policy? I don't know what the group thinks.
Juan, if I may, is Councilman Gutierrez.
Yes, please.
The one thing that I agree with Vanessa, of course, is well, one thing I need to mention is we need to get the public more involved when it comes to this, because we do get a lot of complaints coming from the bike lanes because they're out there now, San Bernardo specifically. The area that I am representing, we don't have a lot of bike lanes here, and it's been spoken to a couple of the people here in the district. They just don't want to see traffic slow down, or them to be able to be more mobile, or to be able to move more efficiently, because there's so many bike lanes all over the city of Laredo, specifically this district. So my question or comment is, can we get more people involved? And like you mentioned, education wise, so these people would understand exactly what's going to be happening with these bike lanes, and that it wouldn't affect their mobility in vehicles, because that's what I think a lot of the issue is, that they're not informed correctly as to where the lanes are going to be, the bike lanes are going to be, a different mobility type of situations. And I think they're just scared, and that's what, from what I've heard, they're just scared of going into a plan that might slow down people moving here in Laredo, north and south, east and west. And that's most of the concern from what I'm hearing from the public side of it. Just to, and that's the one thing I'm asking, just get the public more involved, more educated as far as this is concerned, that the Safe Streets policy is concerned. And then you would probably have a lot more support from council, and not so much bickering, because you involve the community when it comes to, and you educated them, because a lot of them are not educated when it comes to, to this coming into place.
Councilman, we totally agree with that. We can't do this in a bubble. We can't, because the perception would be it's being done in a bubble and we're not listening to the community. So for sure, I just want to say a couple of things about this in terms of our experiences as advocates. Number one, I don't know if this is possible, Dan, but because San Bernardo comes up all the time. And as someone that was involved in that exercise back in the day, and Dan was too, by the way, with a TxDOT hat, right, Dan? San Bernardo, in terms of, it went from 2-lane to 1-lane, and I think a few months ago we had an illustration of a road diet and how that is actually safer. And I know, Councilman, as a peace officer, you understand traffic safety as well. I would love, if it's possible, to have a study on San Bernardo in terms of traffic, fatalities, crashes, pre San Bernardo and post San Bernardo, because I remember when it happened. It was hell on, we were just getting darts thrown at us, and this is the end of the world, and the traffic is going to back up, and
right, exactly.
I don't know, guys. I mean, I go on San Bernardo a lot. I never see traffic backed up. Does it slow it down a little bit from 45 to 30? Well, Councilman, 30 is a good speed, right, for a city. So I'd love to be able to, for us collectively, to show the data so that you can, number one, dispel that myth that we ruined San Bernardo by putting in a bike lane. Because what we did is we got to take a lot of people that ride that street fully unprotected, and not that a stripe really protects you, but at least gives them a place in the street. And I'd be very surprised to see that it's more dangerous or traffic is so much more backed up because of it. So if we can give them an example, I think that would be helpful. And number two, no one ever said that we're going to change Laredo's culture where everyone's going to get out of their Suburbans and get onto a bike. We never said that. All we're trying to do is I know that the MPO conducted a survey about a year ago, reached 1,000 people. And one of the questions were, do you ride a bike now? And they were like, a lot of people said no. If you had a protected trail or a bike lane, would you ride a bike? And they said yes. So nobody rides bikes in Laredo right now because you got to be kind of a Arturo Dominguez. You know, you got to be a warrior. You know, sticking your neck out there every day to be in the streets with 18 wheelers and everybody else. So, I mean, it is no one. And by the way, this does go back to the comp plan. The comp plan showed us when we were collecting all the initial data that at the rate we're growing our population, we're going to be 500 million people in 2030, I believe. And we had traffic engineers illustrate to us that we cannot design ourselves out of congestion. So people are concerned about being slowed down as our population grows because our land isn't growing that much. And we know we're bordered by Mexico on two sides. We have to be able to put in place other ways of allowing people to get around, not just in a car. And even if it's 5% or 6%, that's a big difference. We're not going to, generally the people that I come up to me and say, why are you taking away my lane? That's because that's a person that would never, ever get on a bike. And that's okay. I understand that. We understand that. But, if it allows somebody else to get on a bike and not have to buy a car or be in a car or can't afford a car, some protection, that's what this is about. So I can tell you, if you take a popularity vote, it's overwhelmingly going to be against this. But it's also part of, doing what other cities have been doing successfully and changing that culture. But I agree, we need a plan and we definitely need to educate people the best we can. Absolutely. Or else we are in a bubble.
Right.
And it's never gonna change, but I talk a lot, so thank you.
Can I add something? Hi, this is Alisa Cigarroa here. I just
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
thank you all so much for all of your comments and the presentation. I also wanted to add that I am in support of this policy and the Connect the Streets, but this is for our future. Like it's, and that's something that I think we need to constantly keep in mind. And, we have the younger generations that are leaving Laredo and seeing how this is happening in other cities, and some come back and wish that they had the bike trails and could get around without a car like they were able to in other cities. And so if we want to be attracting our younger generations back and not have such a brain drain, like we need to set these policies in place now for the future. Of course, maybe for all of it, for a lot of people and just the history of Laredo, it's not something that we're used to because we weren't brought up with it. However, but we're losing a lot of our youth to other cities, and I know again, when a lot of people do, and when some do end up moving back, it feels like Laredo's not offering what other cities are. And so I think this is just a step in that direction. And we just have to constantly remember that this is about the future of our city and how to make it better. Anyway, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you,
Sorry, I
Councilmember.
got cut off because my phone got a little bit warm here, so I had to log out. But I think the key formula is data. I think we have to get data from the bridge. I think we have to get data from the metro, exactly where people are traveling in their bikes and where they're headed to, so that we can accommodate at least the people that are using it right now. What you're talking about, and I agree with the City Council Cigarroa, that she's talking about the future. But we can also have actual data from now and look into that future. But I mean, that street is a dream come true. That would be nice to have them like that. But the developers is a different story. But data is the key formula to getting this together and accommodating the people that really use it on a daily basis. And like, for example, when they do those bike rodeos for kids, if they could do a survey, would you send your kid to school? How far do you live from school? I mean, for the kids to go on a bike to school instead of having 200 school buses or 300 by the next 5 years. If we can reduce all of those vehicles, I mean, as council member mentioned, Council Member Perez, that Mines Road is congested. We got to look for alternative routes. We got to look for alternative modes to get over there. And if people are starting to use their bikes to get to Mines Road, at least closer to their business and riding there, I think we should look to accommodate and get them safe to their business, to their workplace. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Arturo. Yeah, that's something that we want to do as an MPO, and something we did through the plan is try to bring that data together right now, and we'll talk about it shortly in the next item. But we do want to develop more maps, online maps that show some of this data as well, and just do a better job, right, as an MPO to track this data, and that way the city, the county has this at their disposal, right, or agencies such as El Metro as well. So we definitely want to play a role in that. I think that's an important first step. And with that being said, I think we need to move on. But I think this was a good discussion. This gives staff a lot to think about, and maybe we can have some more conversations also about how we push this forward, right? Or what the next steps are. But I don't know if there's any other final comments. I think this is going to be a process. It's not going to be overnight, but I think we're moving in the right direction. We have the momentum with the active transportation plan that was adopted. We have this committee that was created. You know, um, so there's a lot of good momentum, and we have Vision Zero. That's also being worked on. So I'm excited about the future. I think sometimes we're just hungry for things, and we want to see all this happen overnight. But again, it's a process. So I think as long as we keep moving in the right direction, keep getting the data, like Arturo mentioned, to build this, promoting the education, and then doing studies like the one Frank mentioned, right, in San Bernardo. I think that's going to be important, right, to drive this forward. So I don't know if you all have any final thoughts on just the next steps.
Yeah, and in the data, I also mean by different seasons, because you might see more people traveling in a bicycle during the cold weather than in the hot weather. So does that vary also? I mean, we need data every quarter maybe of information just to make a good
Yeah.
decisions, to make decisions.
It's a good point.
Arturo, and I think that's one of the main components. You're correct, because during the summertime weather right now, I really don't think people are going to be using or utilizing their bicycle to be getting to work back and forth. In the morning, it's 70, 80 degrees already, 80 degrees here in Laredo. And getting to work sweaty or perspiring, and then coming from work in 100, 100, 205 degree weather, it doesn't seem very possible. And that might be happening in other cities, but they don't deal with the temperatures that we have to deal with. So this is going to be a very, very seasonal thing that we're talking about right now. It's been said over and over again that it's been done in other cities. Yes, but the cities are not dealing with the temperatures that we deal with here in Laredo, and that's what makes it so difficult. So I think it will be a very seasonal thing, maybe from October to March, which is good. It's just 6 months out of the year. It's fantastic. I think we can start to do something with that.
Yeah, Ms. San Miguel had a comment. Go ahead, Ms. San Miguel.
Yes, good afternoon. So I want to repeat a lot of what has been said. My personal, impression of the entire plan is it is long overdue. Like I said, I mean, my impression is this is something that is going to help. Of course, from my perspective as a transit administrator here, yeah, this is something that is going to give everybody an opportunity to look out for the future. We understand that a lot of the things that are happening are going to be new, and I can speak for transit. Of course, we now had to maneuver around bike lanes and construction that was done. And yeah, it's really a challenge for us. It is a challenge for our bus operators. So, but we understand, and we all travel to different cities, and we get to see how this helps. So, I mean, looking at the surveys, I mean, only 10% of the people that responded to the surveys uses transit. But yet, pre-COVID, we transported close to 3 million passengers every year. So yeah, the surveys, they're going to give you part of the story. But then I'm 100% with Councilmember Cigarroa and saying this is for the future. I mean, this is not for today. And yes, we're all going to face some challenges. And yeah, we had to deal definitely with the temperature because that's one of the main concerns of our passengers that have to stand on the heat waiting for the bus. So those are huge challenges that they're gonna deter some people, right, from going out and yeah, I understand. So if I can just add real quick on the page for recommendations, and this just because this is new, this was mentioned and these were directions given to the transit department during the most recent budget workshops. We are going to go ahead and expand the circulator programs to other part of the cities, and that was it's not listed here. Like I said, this was just approved a few weeks back. So my recommendation will be to add it or at least note that on the recommendation for transit because we are. I mean, we got our marching orders to expand the pilots on circulators for the central and South Laredo areas. And it's now a fact that we are pursuing funding for the North Transit Hub that is going to give us a lot of efficiencies. We're going to be able to better connect people. So that's pretty much, I just want to point out that I agree and I echo with everything that has been said. This is going to be a challenge. And like I said, it's been an issue for us. I mean, communication, I think, is very important. Education and internal communications with all the stakeholders. We completed some bus stop improvements along some of these new bike lanes, and we had to remove them within weeks because I mean, we just didn't have an idea how this whole thing was going to work. And even though we sit on these meetings, I sit on these meetings, and then I realized, well, wow, we have these changes. We had to move bus stops around. So, and this is, I guess, we're all learning the impacts and then how we, it's becoming more and more pressing, which everybody already said. We need to communicate, we need to educate, we need to inform. So I just wanted to throw that out. I mean, we are in full support. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pains in the middle, and again, we just have to make the best out of it. But from the transit perspective, that I will repeat. I mean, it is a plus. We go to other cities, we see different things. We see transit dedicated lanes. And to me, the only way we're going to convince people to get on the bus is if we get the reliability of the bus where it really needs to be. Of course, all our buses, half of them are going to go through rail tracks right here in Santa Maria. And our Santa Maria route is the #1 ranking pre-COVID, post-COVID. And yet we have to stop there 5, 10, 15 minutes. So that really throws off our reliability. So that's where a transit dedicated lane comes into place. And the same thing goes for Mines Road. I mean, a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, would love to try transit, but when we're fighting with 18-wheelers for space, reliability is not going to be there. So, how can I go and convince people, get on the bus, we're going to get you to your workplace or to school on time? When I cannot guarantee that. It all depends on whatever is going on the World Trade Bridge. So, and I guess I'm preaching to the choir, but we're here to support. I will ask to consider for recode, and I know that I made those comments and other meetings. We really need to consider out in the future. I mean, not only for bike lanes, but also for transit dedicated bus lanes. I mean, and maybe that's something that we can think of. And I know, Frank, you're a big supporter of this whole program. Maybe we want to get together and discuss it. I mean, just in Austin, they have bike and bus sharing the same lane, and it's dedicated. Nobody there goes into it, or you're gonna get a ticket. So the bus is flowing, the bikes are safely flowing. I guess it is a work in progress, but this is huge, getting this in and getting it approved. So again, we're in support, and we're definitely here to assist on anything that we can to make this work for everybody.
And out of those 3 millions, how many people travel with a bicycle?
We have that data, and it is significant for the Mines Road routes for the convent that goes out all the way to Doctor's Hospital. People sometimes literally wait in line here at the transit center in the mornings because we only have 3 bike position racks. So sometimes we have people that have to wait for the next bus because they're gonna get to that bus, let's say in the Mines Road area, and then they're gonna bike for probably another 2 to 3 miles to all the way back on the warehousing district there. So it is significant. I wish I had those numbers right here with me, but it is pretty high.
So we produced that data using the stuff y'all provide, Ms. San Miguel, for the 2019. It's in the traffic plan and the active transportation plan, those maps. I spent some time creating that data. Page 14 of chapter 2. But Santa Maria has 2,030 bicycle boardings in 2019.
Yeah.
So we
Sharing
did
that.
take the data from Customs and Border Protection, El Metro. We spend a lot of time compiling this information to put it in the report. And what we're working on now is to put it online. So that way it's no longer just static. People can go on there and use it in their meetings and have some dynamic information.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sharing it on the screen. You can find the plan on our website, or now I'll share the, or Julio or Gracie, could you help me put the plan link on the chat box, please?
And just as an update, I've already received the 2020 and waiting for the 2021 data so we can look at the pre and post numbers. And I have a web map I'm going to show you all with some of the accident stuff here shortly.
It's going to be important. And I think Claudia mentioned just, the need to coordinate with transit, right? When these bike lanes are going in, or when you have, you're redesigning streets. So that's something that could actually be worked into a complete streets policy, making sure that everyone that needs to coordinate is coordinating. So that's something we can do. And Gracie just went ahead and shared the active plan link. You can find the maps we did, some data that we have. Also, you could look at the plan in its entirety or by chapter. This was a plan that was adopted back in February, but there's a lot of good data on there and good maps that you can look at. But like Jason said, it's time to update. So that's actually a good segue to our active transportation plan updates. So it's going to be very brief. Cristina Duarte from the health department is here. So there's an opportunity that we have for trail signage. There are some grant monies that she had available. We're looking at maybe repair stations, or she was looking at that. I believe she wasn't able to use the money for that. So we talked about signage. Our active transportation plan does talk about racing route awareness along the active transportation network and on streets pointing to where trails are and along trails. We had talked about doing uniform branded signage. We still want to get to that point. We want to do trailhead signs, something we want to get to. But right now there's this opportunity for a few signs that she could purchase through the grant, but they need to be identified and installed before the end of the fiscal year, which would be September 31st. So we're kind of like rushing just to find some locations because it's a good opportunity. And we've been talking to parks. I think earlier we had reached out to traffic. No, Danny's here. I wanted to, I don't know, maybe talk to you to see if we wanted to put signs on the street that indicated where a trail was, and I've seen that like along Shiloh and I think Bartlett to Zacate Creek. I don't know what we need, what type of permits we would need, or what that would entail. But that is an opportunity we have right now. We're looking at different things. Ideally, we would like to maybe start off with putting signs on the street to point towards where the trails are with the name of the trail. So, for example, like the Zacate Creek Trail, some sign pointing people in that direction. Near Mike Doyle Bike Trail, there's a sign for Mike Doyle, but when you're around the area, there's no signage that tells you that you can access the Mike Doyle Trail, right? So that's what we're looking at right now, just with this opportunity that presented itself. I don't know if Christina wants to add something.
I would like to say something.
Yes,
Are
go
these
ahead.
signs also, are these signs also for trails, like for Shiloh, inside Shiloh, that we could put for an emergency, call this number, or this is the way out, emergency way out, and at what mile you're inside, and in case you have an accident, you can call and I'm in mile whatever, something like that. Are those signs good for that as well?
Right. I know Gracie.
Good afternoon, Arturo. Councilmember Marte Martinez requested for Parks and us to get with fire, and I believe one of the owners of the what is it, Mario Romo, to meet so we can go and get he's willing to pay for the funding to do the signage inside Shiloh Trucks. Okay.
Well, we could.
So
I mean, if we can take advantage of that money as well, I mean, we could maybe put more signs um, that are in those monies. I would volunteer to help out and go through the trails. And I know the fastest way in, the fastest way out in case of an emergency.
But we also need fire to make sure we also have an in and out exit for them safely too. So that will be all in coordination with that. That's the reason that we've been holding back, because I know fire department right now has a lot of things going on. But we're trying, so I know JJ will be scheduling something with them as soon as possible, because he already approved that, and that'd be great if we can work in conjunction to make it even better. And that's what you're asking.
This is Frank. Arturo, when we were having Bike Laredo meetings, I think 2 or maybe even 3 years ago, we had a subcommittee that was working with fire just on that trail. And I know they did some good work. Gracie, weren't you part of that? Because you were at Parks back then. I just want to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel here. I don't know I don't remember how far they got, but I know there was a committee. I remember them making presentations to us on, like, they mapped it with fire. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Because it does to me.
But there's no signs. There's no signs.
They had a plan to put the signs
yeah.
in, like they were meeting. And so I don't remember how far they got. For some reason, I remember Guillermo Walls from
the
Health Department was involved in that. Right, Gracie? Am I remembering
Yes, Frank.
this? Okay.
You're absolutely right. I remember meeting also with Mr. Dominguez after we had those meetings, Bike Laredo meetings. And yes, we did have a plan. Parks was working on that. If I remember correctly, unfortunately, the funding was not, it was not coming from the health department back then. I think we were looking at getting some funding from what it's called the discretionary funds, if I'm not mistaken. But for some reason, those funds are not, I guess, they don't qualify for certain items. And so that was something that it's still, I guess, stayed there, like looking for that opportunity for additional funds to be able to pay for signage.
Right, but my point is, like, now it sounds like there's funding. I just want to make sure, like, well, Arturo, of course, said he would be happy to help, which is great. Anybody that needs help will help. But if we have a plan that was started, maybe I just don't want us to have to go from scratch. If that committee and you all started something on the planning side, maybe that's where we start now. Let's dust that off and look at it and then move forward. Because it sounds like if the councilman has money to do that, maybe we can accelerate the process, is my point.
Yeah, and for this, I think the budget we're looking at was just a few signs, maybe up to 15. I think Christina mentioned. I know the shallow trails had come up. There it seems like, you would need a lot of signage and be a little bit more elaborate. Might take a little bit more time than the window we have, and I know that, like Araceli mentioned, that the councilman's looking at that. But we can see what other funding we can identify. But if there's like an immediate sign that you think is necessary at Shallow Trail, we can definitely look at that. Maybe we can't put all the money there, but if there's like an immediate sign that you think, just this is what we need, then maybe that's something we can help. I know Christina, in her conversation with the grant funder, I think she mentioned that it was for route awareness. So that's the way the funding was, allocated, and that's the way we need to use it. So, we can definitely consider that. But I think, to make sure that it's done right at Shallow, and I think what Gracie had mentioned before was that you wanted to make sure that you had different wayfinding signs that also showed intensity levels, and then you have that emergency numbers, right? Or that way you can tell people what mile marker you're on within the trail or what location you're at. I think that might take a little bit more time just to coordinate everything and make sure that we do it right. But definitely there's like an immediate opportunity where we can help, we'd want to do that. And even if it's not through this these funds that Christina at the health department has, I mean, I would definitely be interested in helping you move that forward, and whatever support we can provide, definitely count us in.
Hi, Juan. This is Cristina Duarte over at the Health Department. Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Cristina Duarte, the Chief of Health Education here at Health. I am under an obesity prevention grant, and we were allowed to spend $4,700 on signs. And so that's what we're going to be doing. I'm working very closely with Juan and the rest of his team and Ms. Gracie. But yes, as Juan mentioned, we're going to go ahead and start off with increasing route awareness. I will keep the budget in mind maybe for next year. If we do have additional fundings, I can use those monies to support any other initiatives inside the trails. But just in a nutshell, count on our support here at the Health Department always. Thank you.
Thank you. So you guys, yeah, my other question was just to Danny. I don't know if there's anything we need to keep in mind if we did want to put some signs along the right of way, just indicating where trails were.
We'll need to see specific locations because we
Okay.
don't want to, overload with signs, but we will make every effort to
Yeah.
accommodate them. And also utilities and right-of-way ways affected.
Okay.
The one thing I just do want to, I guess, make sure we factor in is maintenance of these signs. It's easy to pay for them the first time,
Right.
but then I have to maintain them in perpetuity. So, we want to make sure we don't put in these elaborate signs that cost more money than usual. If they're going to be regular signs, that kind of thing. So for maintenance purposes, it's easier for us.
Okay. And I did speak to one of your admin assistants earlier about the meeting. I think she was going to forward that to you. And
Yeah, she told me about it.
Okay. Good.
Someone will be there.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, and I think with Arturo, Frank, I mean, maybe we can have another meeting, right? Talk about what we can do at Shallow. So I know that's an immediate need because I know a lot of people use that trail. Let's see what else we can do to support that. Moving on to the next item, just the updates to the active transportation plan maps. And at the last meeting, you all had talked about. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I got to see a recording. You all had a real good conversation, talking about making sure that we identify easy connections to in the trail system or the active transportation network. So we talked about overlaying existing projects with projects that are in the pipeline. I know we started talking about doing some of that work. That's going to be something that's in process. I think Jason, you wanted to just share something briefly, just to show them
Yes. Frank, I
some ideas that we have.
still owe you that map because all things considered, but I do have a few examples of stuff that was ongoing. Share my screen real quick. These were workshop maps that we intended to do. Can y'all see my screen?
Let me stop sharing mine.
Okay. Better?
Yeah, we see it.
These are some workshop maps we were looking at doing right before the trail was going to go into the Santa Maria Trail. We're just showing, route connectivity, the route location and what it could connect to. And then on the right side, I was showing some of the bus stops. This is an incomplete map, but just kind of giving you the theme of what we were looking at to go out to the public to educate, what we're doing and how it can connect. And just kind of had a little bit of examples. This is still needs to be spelled out, but talked about route awareness and a couple of the bus routes that connect to it, distances. And that was kind of a little bit of what we mentioned. Had some more identified maps of what we would do within those sections. So this is some of the estimate numbers that we had generated from the construction costs across the state. And then kind of just looking at different alternatives. So taking that, we wanted to take it a little bit more and make it interactive. And so right now what I've been doing is trying to turn this into all web maps. And right here, this is what our current active transportation routes has a little bit of information as off street, on street. We're gonna add some photos, but discussing, just since we have a little bit of time, I wanted to show y'all, you had asked about data-driven decisions. And so some of like the automobile accidents, showing these are where fatalities have been from 2015 to 2019. We mentioned the bicycle accidents. This is a heat map, but I want to specifically show you the San Bernardo route as we discussed. And so here you can see, this is 2015, 2019, I think I counted 4 total. And so I'd like to compare that, as Frank mentioned, with the post-COVID data and see what these numbers look like. But this kind of gives you just a quick view of the active transportation plan in a digital version where you can be a little bit more engaged with it. But then also as we're making decisions, this is intersections with the highest accident counts. So number one is Del Mar and McPherson, 297 crashes between 2016 and 2018. But the highest concentration of accidents is in this four blocks of the downtown area. So we will be elaborating the plan and turning it digital, as well as making a story map, so that way everybody gets to use the same information no matter where you go. It's the committee's tool to convey active transportation and the need, as well as for the public to learn more about what's in their neighborhood and what's coming.
This is really great. Thank you. Jason, is there any way also of overlaying the Strava heat maps that are out there in terms of where we are finding cyclists, at least those that are using Strava?
I do have that data. I just need to convert some of that into, or just pull in the API into this, but we can add that as a layer, definitely.
Yeah, and this is all going to be a work in progress, and the MPO is trying to help where it can with developing more data, developing these maps, and collaborating with planning department staff. For now, Jason's been busy mostly with current planning duties, and when he can, he helps with maps. Um, but this is something we want to do, as the MPO is to provide a lot more of this data and these maps and make it interactive and have it online. And we've been looking at the Alamo area MPO as an example of the interactive maps that they use. We want to get to that level. So hopefully, over the next few months, we'll be developing those capabilities.
Jason, where you can regenerate yourself, where you can eat, free Wi-Fi, all that type of data is good for a map.
That's great. Yeah, and like we had mentioned before, we were also working again with the health department with Christina. Also, we want to do that, like some maps as well that show where the amenities are along trails and things like that. So, but all this is going to help. Having it online is going to make a big difference, and I think we can really promote, biking in the community through this, and it can help a lot, right, in the decisions that we're making going forward. But that's a good idea, Arturo. I think that's great.
Yeah, we'll take all additional comments if other things come to mind. This will be an ongoing thing, but I wanted to have this as a working map for the committee to we can pull it up in the meetings and give you all the link to where you'll have access to it. And so that way it's just kind of something that we can all go back to. We're all talking about the same thing consistently instead of a static map that might be dated and not everybody will have access to it or the most recent information. So working with the planning department and the MPO, this is the direction we're headed. These data-driven decisions are definitely both at the center of our mindset and be supportive of all things moving forward. And if you want, if there's anything else y'all like me to add, just go ahead and share that with Juan or the team.
Thank you. It's exciting. I think we're 10 minutes over the past one already. I know some people had to leave. That being said, we'll move on. Thank you all for staying with us. The last thing is just a request for future agenda items. If there's anything y'all would like to see at a future meeting, I know El Metro had talked about also giving a more detailed presentation about the circulators. We'll be in contact with them about that. And our next meeting will be Wednesday, September 29th at noon. So I know we had talked about also trying to go in person, and just the way things have been, we've been trying to play it by ear. Since this is, we have a very large invite list, right? So it would be a very large gathering. So right now I think we'll still do virtual, but hopefully in the near future we can go back to in person. But yeah, if there's other items that y'all want to discuss outside of this meeting too, definitely just let us know and we can schedule something to hear your ideas or to advance some of the ideas that we've been talking about. So I don't know if there's any announcements or any items any member would want to speak about, or if you would like an item in the next meeting, please let us know. Right? I think we're all we all got to share our thoughts today. We're probably ready for lunch if we haven't had lunch yet. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you again next month, Wednesday, September 29th. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. See you soon. Be careful, everyone.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.